I never imagined a college graduation ceremony would change my life. I thought it would just be a formality. My nephew was graduating, and I showed up out of obligation. But that day, sitting in a sea of white folding chairs and modest decorations, with classical music humming in the background, I saw her, and it was like the whole room dimmed and only she was in the light. She wasn't stunning in the conventional sense. No designer makeup, no glamorous gown, quite the opposite. Her dress was so simple, some people mistook her for a staff member. Faded light blue fabric, slightly wrinkled with worn-out edges. Her shoes were clearly tight and falling apart. And still, she walked with a dignity that shut the noise out of the world around her. She had a small boy in her arms. Her son, as I would later learn. A curious little guy, maybe 5, with wide, observant eyes. As she walked past the guests, I noticed the looks. A few people turned up their noses. Others chuckled softly. I saw it all. I saw when one of the well-dressed girls, the type who lives on Instagram, snapped a photo of her and whispered to her friends, "Graduate or janitor, you tell me." And that was when I started truly watching her, not out of pity, not out of curiosity, but because there was something about her, something raw, powerful, something that reminded me of who I used to be. See, I know what it's like to come from nothing. Before the companies, before the mansions and suits, I was a street vendor in Queens selling empanadas from a cart. And I saw in her eyes the same hunger, the same exhaustion, and the same unbreakable hope I once carried. Throughout the ceremony, I couldn't stop glancing her way. She sat in the back holding her son close. The boy played with a little broken airplane toy. She smiled at him with such tenderness it carved a mark on my chest. I wondered who she was. Where was her family? Why was she alone? That's when I overheard a group nearby mention her name. Emily. She got pregnant during sophomore year. Remember, the guy bailed. What a mess. My blood boiled. They spoke about her like she was garbage, like raising a child alone while studying and working wasn't something heroic. I already knew the world was unfair. What I didn't know was that this moment would become deeply personal to me. Just before the final speech, I saw her leave the room, probably to the restroom. Her head was down, her shoulders heavy. Her son whispered something to her and she kissed his forehead. And in that instant, I realized something. That woman was made of something no money in the world could buy. When she returned, not smiling, but more steady, I wanted to approach her. But I waited. I needed to hear what others would say. I needed to understand. I listened to every cruel word, every snicker, and inside me, something began to burn. None of them knew they were about to witness something far greater than a diploma. And I was about to fall in love for the first time in my life, and for real. After that ceremony, I couldn't get her out of my head. That night, I returned home to my penthouse in Manhattan. Marble floors, city lights, silence. I sat on the edge of my designer leather couch, but my thoughts were somewhere else, with her. Who was this woman? What kind of story was behind that tired, beautiful gaze? What kind of strength did it take to raise a child alone, graduate, and still smile like that? I asked one of my private assistants to find out, someone discreet. Not because I was being invasive, but because something inside me needed to understand. And what I discovered shook me. Her name was Emily Torres. 24, lived in a housing project in the Bronx, a single mom, no criminal record, no debt, just poverty and a spotless community volunteer record. She lived in a tiny studio apartment on the 6th floor of an old, beat-up building. No elevator, no AC. The heater barely worked. She had a tiny fridge, one pan and a mattress on the floor. On the wall there was a taped-up photo of her mother, who had passed from cancer 2 years prior. The next morning I drove by her neighborhood, Stayed inside the car, didn't approach, just watched. There she was, setting up a folding table near the entrance of the subway station. A handwritten cardboard sign read, "Homemade empanadas, 3 for $5. She was wearing jeans and a hoodie, hair pulled into a bun. Her son, Tommy, sat wrapped in a worn blanket in a stroller beside her. The wind was cold, but she sang softly to him while stacking her little boxes with care. The love she poured into something so small was something I hadn't seen in years. People passed by without looking. Some made rude comments. One man shouted, "Get a real job." She didn't even flinch, didn't react, just kept her eyes on Tommy. An elderly woman appeared a few minutes later, Miss Rosa, her neighbor. Grey hair in a beanie, thick glasses, smile like a warm fire. She took Tommy into her arms, while Emily hustled between the sidewalk and the subway entrance, offering her food. "You're gonna make it, baby. I can feel it," Miss Rosa said. Emily just nodded and whispered, "I have to for him." I stayed there for over an hour, just watching. When she finally packed up and climbed the stairs back to her building, I followed slowly in my car. She carried the child, her folding table, and a bag of unsold food. Tommy started crying. "I'm hungry, Mummy." And she replied softly, "I know, baby, I'll make you some eggs and rice, okay?" I parked a block away and got out. From the street, I could see the inside of her apartment. No curtains, no furniture, just a mattress, a stack of college books, crayons on the floor, and a strong woman making rice on a portable gas stove. Tommy sat cross-legged on the mattress. He looked at her and said, "Mommy, when I grow up, I'm gonna buy you a house with a couch and a big TV." Emily laughed, not bitterly, not sarcastically, but with pure love. "As long as I have you, I already have everything I need." I drove home slowly that day, not because of traffic, but because something in my chest felt tight, like I had just witnessed a miracle, wrapped in exhaustion, hope, and the scent of cooking oil. And I realized something. The world ignores women like Emily, but I saw her, and I wasn't going to look away again. A few days after the graduation, my nephew called me asking for help picking up a certificate he had forgotten at the university. I agreed instantly, but deep down, I had another reason. I wanted to see her again, and I did. Emily walked out of the administrative office holding a small envelope, her brows slightly furrowed. I stayed on the other side of the courtyard, watching. She opened the envelope, pulled out a folded piece of paper, the formal invitation for the graduation gala, and instead of smiling, she sighed. A quiet, tired sigh. The kind of sigh you let out when life gives you something but forgets the instructions. "A gala? With what dress?" she murmured softly, thinking no one could hear. That sentence echoed in my head for days. I imagined her standing in front of her tiny closet, holding up the same 2 dresses she'd worn for years, wondering if they'd laugh at her again. And it broke something inside me. The next day, I passed by her building again. She was at the front steps talking to Miss Rosa. "I still have your mom's graduation dress, sweetie. I washed it. It's clean," the old lady offered. "But it's old and it's faded." "So what? You're alive, you graduated, and that's more than most. Wear it with pride." A few minutes later, Emily came out holding the dress. Pale blue, thin fabric, clearly from another era. She held it against her chest and looked at herself in a small, broken mirror by the door. And then she smiled, not a happy smile, a quiet one, a resigned smile, the kind you wear when you decide to walk into the storm anyway. Later, she tried on Miss Rosa's old shoes. One was too tight, the other too loose, but she didn't complain. She just thanked her with that soft voice. Tommy, lying on the floor drawing with a crayon stub, looked up and asked, "Mummy, are you going to be a princess today?" She kissed his forehead. "Yes, baby. Today I'll be a princess." That scene shattered me, and no one knew it. But I had just bought a new tuxedo, I wasn't going to that gala as a businessman, nor as anyone's relative. I was going as a witness, because something told me that night would change everything. That afternoon, I saw her and Tommy leave the building. The faded blue dress flowed gently in the wind. Her makeup-free face glowed with something deeper, courage. Tommy wore a button-up shirt with a missing button and a crooked smile. She didn't have a crown, but she walked like a queen. Neighbors watched from their windows. No one said a word. But Tommy, before they got on the city bus, turned around and shouted, "My mom graduated." I followed from a distance. They got on a crowded MTA bus. No one offered a seat. No one noticed that they were in the presence of greatness. A woman who had raised a son with nothing but love. A woman who was headed to a celebration with more dignity in her smile than anyone in a designer gown. And I knew that night would bring pain, but it would also be the beginning of something far greater. She didn't know it yet, but someone was already watching her and falling for her silently. The gala had already started when I arrived. I took a seat near the back of the auditorium, just like last time, only this time I was different. I wasn't just a guest. I was there for her. And something in my gut told me I had to stay alert, because something important was about to happen. And then she entered. Emily walked in holding Tommy's hand. The blue dress, freshly pressed but clearly aged, floated around her ankles. Her hair was pulled back into a simple bun, no jewelry, no makeup. But her eyes were brave, even if unsure. Tommy wore his best clothes, a shirt slightly too big, and shoes a bit too tight, but he walked with the pride of someone escorting royalty. And as soon as they passed the guests, it began. The stares, then the whispers, then the laughter. What is she even doing here? Brought her kid to a gala? Is she serious? She looks like she came straight from Goodwill. I heard it all, and then I saw Brittany, the same girl from the graduation, the influencer type. She took out her phone and snapped a picture of Emily as she passed. I saw her post it to her Instagram story with the caption, "Gala or garage sale, you decide." The quiet snickers turned into open giggles. Professors averted their eyes. Classmates nudged each other. Emily, still holding Tommy's hand, walked to the very last row and sat down. She didn't cry, didn't speak, just straightened her dress slowly and looked down, but I saw it. I saw the way her throat moved as she swallowed back tears. I saw her whisper something to Tommy. "Stay here with the lady, sweetheart. Mommy will be right back." She got up and quietly left the hall. I didn't follow her inside the restroom. That wasn't my place. But I stayed nearby, and through the door I heard it. The softest, most painful cry I've ever heard. A breathless kind of crying. The sound of someone breaking but doing it quietly because they've learned no one will care. And then I heard her whisper, "Mom, if you were here, would you be proud of me?" That broke me. In that moment, I felt ashamed. Ashamed of the world. Ashamed of how easy it is to ignore someone else's pain when they're not dressed like you, when they don't look like they belong. But then she returned, eyes a little red, cheeks flushed, but her spine straighter than before. She sat back down, picked up Tommy's hand and kissed it, then looked straight ahead, ignoring the stares. The laughter faded, because her silence spoke louder than their cruelty. Emily wasn't just some girl from the projects. She wasn't just a single mother. She was steel. And in that exact moment, she didn't just survive, she won. After the cruel whispers, the fake laughs, and her quiet return to her seat, Emily sat there with Tommy in her lap, her old dress a little wrinkled, her expression unreadable. She didn't cry, She didn't break, but she also didn't smile. And still, she stayed. The gala moved on with its program. More speeches, toasts, professors talking about excellence and legacy, while ignoring the very person who embodied those words the most, until something unexpected happened. The dean of the college walked up to the microphone, adjusted his glasses. The room fell quiet. "Before we begin handing out the honorary awards," he said, "I need to speak from the heart." Everyone turned toward the stage. "Tonight we celebrate academic success, but there's someone here who has taught us more than any textbook. Someone who studied full-time, worked nights, raised a child alone, and never once asked for pity." Murmurs started. Heads turned. "She didn't show up tonight in a designer gown. She's not wearing heels. But she walks with more grace than anyone in this room. Her name is Emily Torres, and she is the definition of courage." Dead silence. Then, the spotlight shifted to the back of the room. Emily froze. You could hear whispers. Some looked shocked, others looked ashamed. The dean gestured warmly. "Emily, please come to the stage." She didn't move. One of the professors next to her gently touched her arm. Tommy looked up and smiled. And slowly, she stood. She picked up Tommy in her arms and walked toward the stage. Each step heavy but steady. I couldn't breathe. She reached the stairs. The dean helped her up, held her hand and raised it. "This woman has shown us what real achievement looks like, and I, for one, am honored to have her here." The crowd applauded, first softly, then louder, until people were on their feet. And then, Tommy, still in her arms, reached for the microphone. No one expected it. He gripped it with both hands and said in the clearest little voice, "My mommy is a princess, even if she doesn't have a new dress." The entire auditorium went still, and then the applause came again. Louder, stronger, real. People cried. Professors wiped their eyes. Even those who had laughed earlier now covered their faces in shame. "Emily," she smiled. And this time, it wasn't a smile of survival. It was the smile of someone who finally felt seen, honored. She stepped down, Tommy still holding the microphone like a trophy, and walked past rows of people standing, clapping, watching her with awe. And in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't just witnessing greatness. I was falling in love with it. After the ceremony, people flocked to the reception hall, sipping sparkling cider, clinking glasses, posing for photos, showing off their gowns and watches. I stayed back, quiet, watching the crowd. And there she was, Emily, sitting alone at a small round table in the corner, Tommy on her lap, half asleep, one shoe missing. She looked drained, but proud, like a soldier after battle. I walked toward her slowly, no sudden moves. I didn't want to scare her, just be present. When she noticed me, her eyes filled with hesitation, as if she expected the worst, like she was used to help coming with strings attached. I smiled and said, "I just wanted to say congratulations. What you did tonight was more powerful than anything I've seen in years." She looked down. "I didn't do anything special," she whispered. "I just survived." That hit me hard, deep. "No, you taught this whole room what real strength looks like. I run companies, manage billions. But you? You taught me something I couldn't learn in any boardroom." Tommy stared at me, blinking curiously. "Are you a teacher?" he asked. I smiled. "Tonight I was. I learned from your mom." Emily let out a quiet laugh. Just a little, but it was real. And it was beautiful. We talked a few more minutes about little things, the food, the music. I didn't want to overwhelm her. I just wanted her to feel safe. When it felt right, I stood up. "It was truly an honor to meet you," I said. As I walked away, I glanced back. She was trying to calm Tommy, who was getting fussy. He whispered, "I'm hungry." She kissed his forehead and picked up her coat. There were trays full of desserts nearby, but no one had offered her any. She didn't ask. She just held Tommy's hand and walked out. I followed them from a distance. They took the bus back home. Same cold bench, same tired posture. But something about them shined. As if even after all the humiliation, they were still made of something the world couldn't break. That night I couldn't sleep. Instead, I made calls. To my private pediatrician, to my non-profit foundation, to a real estate agent I trusted. I told them, "Find me a clean, safe 2-bedroom near the Bronx. Quiet building, I'll cover everything." The next morning, I filled a box with groceries, diapers, books, a few toys, and I went there myself. I knocked. She opened the door in sweatpants and a ponytail, surprised, holding Tommy, who was still rubbing his eyes. She looked at me like she expected a bill, like I was there to collect a debt she didn't owe. I took a breath. "Emily, I know this is unexpected, but I'd like to help. Not because I feel sorry for you, but because you showed me something rare, and I'd be honored to stand beside that." She didn't answer at first. Then, quietly, she stepped aside and said, "You can come in." And so I did, into the tiny apartment, the peeling paint, the toy scattered on the floor, the smell of reheated rice, and suddenly it had felt like the only place in the world I wanted to be. Because I knew right then, this wasn't charity, this was home. I never planned to stay. My idea was to offer some help, get them food, a decent place, make sure Tommy was healthy. That was it. I didn't want to cross any lines. I wasn't there to rescue anyone. But there are things in life you can't plan for, like the sound of a child's laughter echoing in a small kitchen, like the smell of garlic and rice cooking in a tiny pan, like the way a woman smiles at you without even realizing it. In the weeks that followed, I became part of their routine. I started coming by after work. Sometimes I brought groceries, sometimes toys. Sometimes I brought nothing, just myself. And somehow that was enough. I found them a modest 2-bedroom apartment near a quiet park in the Bronx. Clean, sunny, with big windows and hardwood floors. Emily insisted on cleaning it all herself. "I don't want you thinking I'm a project," she told me. I replied, "No, you're a masterpiece." She laughed, rolled her eyes, but I could tell it meant something to her. Our time together wasn't glamorous. I helped her cook, and I messed everything up. Burned rice, broke a plate, forgot to add salt. Tommy laughed so hard once he got the hiccups. Emily pretended to be annoyed, but her eyes sparkled. Miss Rosa visited often. She brought banana bread, stories about her late husband, and lots of unsolicited advice. "This one's a keeper," she told Emily one night, pointing at me. "He's got the hands of a worker, but the eyes of someone who's seen too much." Emily just smiled and handed her more tea. One lazy Saturday, we watched a movie on their tiny couch. Tommy curled up on my lap, half asleep. Emily sat beside me, arms folded, eyes on the screen, but clearly somewhere else. We didn't talk much, but that silence, it was the loudest feeling I'd ever known. Because in that moment, I felt whole. She started trusting me, not with words, but with gestures. She gave me a spare key to the building, let me walk Tommy to preschool when she was tired, asked for my opinion when picking out furniture, and "Tommy?" He started calling me Dad Esteban. At first she tried to correct him, then she stopped. "He loves you," she whispered one night. I didn't know what to say, so I just hugged him tighter. Me, A man who used to calculate every step, count every dollar, keep his emotions locked behind boardroom doors, now felt more alive sitting on a threadbare couch with a toy truck poking into my side than I ever had in a skyscraper suite, because that's what love does. It sneaks in quietly, through the smell of dinner, through bedtime stories, through mismatched socks on the floor, and before you even realize it, you're already a family. Just when everything was falling into place. When Tommy laughed more than he cried. When Emily hummed while folding laundry. When I started to believe in something bigger than success again. He showed up. I was in a meeting when Emily texted me. "Brandon is here, at the Yao door. I don't know what to do." Brandon. The man who left her alone during her second year of college. The man who never visited the hospital. Never sent a birthday card. Never even checked if his son had shoes on his feet or food on the table. I left the meeting without finishing it. By the time I arrived, he was standing outside her building, holding a cheap box of candy and wearing a fake Rolex that gleamed too much in the sun. He smiled like he thought this was charming, like the years of abandonment could be erased with a knock and a grin. Emily was pale. Tommy stood behind her legs, eyes wide, silent. I got out of the car and walked straight toward them. Brandon looked me over top to bottom. "You must be the new boyfriend," he said, smug. "And you must be the guy who disappeared when she needed a man," I answered, voice calm but firm. Emily didn't speak, but I could see her fists clenched by her sides. Then Tommy stepped forward. "Are you my dad? Why don't I know you?" Brandon laughed, crouched down, tried to reach out. But Tommy pulled back and ran straight into my arms. "I don't want him to touch me. I don't like him." I didn't even have to say anything, but I did. I walked Brandon to the curb, away from Emily and Tommy. "Let's get one thing clear," I said. "You abandoned them. You forfeited any right to call yourself a father." He smirked. "You don't know me." "Actually, I do. 2 years ago, you tried to defraud one of my companies. Your name's in our system. You're not just a coward. You're a scam artist." He froze. His expression cracked. He turned to Emily, hoping she'd defend him. But she just stood in the doorway, calm and composed. "Brandon, it's too late," she said. "Don't come back." And then a voice from the second-floor window rang out. "If it's trash you're looking for, you better check the dump, not this building." It was Miss Rosa. Brandon left, muttering something under his breath. Tommy, still holding my hand, looked up at me. "Can you live with us forever?" I bent down, hugged him tight, and whispered, "As long as you want me here, I'm not going anywhere." And I meant it, because that moment wasn't about revenge, it wasn't about winning. It was about a little boy who chose his real father, not by blood, but by love. A few days after Brandon's failed visit, I woke up early, poured myself a coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with my phone. And there it was, the video. Someone had filmed the graduation gala. A student. The clip started with Brittany and her friends laughing at Emily, the Instagram post, the snide comments. Then it cut to Tommy on stage, holding the microphone, saying, "Well, my mommy is a princess even if she doesn't have a new dress." I watched the whole thing in silence. The caption on the video? The woman everyone laughed at became the woman we all admire. It had gone viral overnight. Hundreds of thousands of likes, thousands of comments, messages like, "I'm sobbing. This broke me. Emily is the real queen." And "Cancel Brittany." And cancel her they did. Brittany's sponsorships dropped her. Her PR team released a cold statement. She posted a fake crying apology video saying she didn't mean to hurt anyone. But the damage was done. Because the world may be cruel, but sometimes, just sometimes, it corrects itself. Emily. She said nothing, posted nothing, didn't even bring it up. When I asked her about it, she said, "I don't need to prove anything. God already defended me." That shook me, because while Brittany was trending for all the wrong reasons, Emily was busy making pancakes in a kitchen filled with sunlight, love and crayons on the floor. But I couldn't stop there. At my educational foundation, we were launching a new community project. Free after-school programs for single mothers. We needed someone strong, someone who lived the reality, not just read about it in a report. So I asked her. She thought I was joking. "You want me to run a program, like be in charge? You already are. You raised a child, graduated, and survived a world that tried to crush you. There's no better resume than that," she cried, softly, then nodded. "If we do this, I want to call it something meaningful," she said, "something that honors where I came from." We named it the Rosa Hope Project. Miss Rosa almost choked on her tea when we told her. "You're putting my name on a building? Lord help us all," she said, but deep down, she was glowing. That same week, I took Emily and Tommy to a small bakery near Central Park. It wasn't fancy, just cozy. Tommy, covered in chocolate frosting, turned to me and asked, "Are we rich now?" Emily looked nervous, embarrassed, but I smiled and said, "We're not rich with money, buddy, we're rich with love, and that's worth way more." He nodded, then pointed at his mom. "She's the richest person I know." Emily laughed, covered her face, wiped a tear, and at that moment I knew she didn't just survive, she inspired, and I was lucky to be part of her story. 1 year after that gala, everything had changed, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in 1,000 quiet, beautiful ways. Emily was no longer the girl walking with her head down. She still wore simple clothes, still tied her hair in a bun, still made strong coffee and forgot the sugar. But now she had a light in her eyes, a softness in her laugh, a pride that no longer hid. At the Rosa Hope Project, she was a legend. The other moms listened to her like she was a lighthouse in the storm. She didn't preach as she shared, and that made all the difference. Tommy was thriving, reading better, sleeping peacefully, drawing superheroes that always looked suspiciously like me. And I wasn't the millionaire anymore. I was his dad, her partner, their family. And one evening, while she stirred, pasta in the kitchen, and Tommy danced barefoot to some old pop song, I couldn't hold it anymore. "Emily," I said, walking up behind her, "will you marry me?" She turned around, spoon in hand, shocked. "Are you serious?" "More than I've ever been about anything. But I don't have a fancy dress, I don't have a big name." "Exactly, and I've never loved anyone more." She dropped the spoon, hugged me tight, and whispered, "Yes." We didn't do a fancy wedding, it wasn't us. We got married in Miss Rosa's backyard, string lights hanging from the trees, folding chairs borrowed from the community center, homemade food, kids running around in mismatched outfits. Emily wore the same light blue dress, the one they laughed at. This time it had been sewn, pressed, and paired with a tiny white flower in her hair. Tommy walked down the aisle with the rings in a little tin box he painted himself. His shirt was crooked, his shoes too big, and he was perfect. When the officiant asked if anyone wanted to say a few words, Tommy raised his hand. He stood on a milk crate, took the mic, and said, "My mum used to cry alone. Now she laughs with us. She didn't need a prince. But I'm glad she found one. No one could hold back the tears. We kissed, we danced. Miss Rosa toasted with apple juice and declared us officially ridiculous and adorable. The neighbors brought casseroles. Someone played an old guitar. And that night, under those backyard lights, the world felt small and perfect. That same evening, Emily told me something I'll never forget. I used to think I needed to be rescued, but all I really needed was to be seen. And I knew exactly what she meant, because she didn't just find love, She didn't just find a partner, she found herself, and me, I found everything I never knew I was missing in a woman with a tired smile and a heart made of gold.